Time to go lights out with driver Casey Mears. Casey, you're coming back, man. How did this whole deal come together?
Well, honestly, about a couple years ago, I was out when Jimmy was coming back from the IndyCar stuff. He tested out at Phoenix, and I was out there just kind of watching and supporting him. And there was a reporter, and I can't remember exactly who it was. Somebody was doing a story on him. They wanted to ask me a few questions, and they started off by going, Casey Mears, you've been doing this for quite a long time. You got 489 starts, and blah blah blah, and then went on to asked the questions. I answered them, and then I walked off, and I went, "Okay, wow! I didn't realize I was that close to 500 starts." And from that, I started just making a few calls. I'd always go to Phoenix every year, and a handful of races. So I was always telling people that I'd love to, get back and try to fulfill that goal of making it to 500 starts. And it was light chatter, really. And eventually, about, gosh, I want to say a little over a month ago now, I was talking to Carl Long, and shoot, we ended on the phone for about an hour, and he goes, "Man, would you really be interested in running my car?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'd love to come back and get a shot to chase that 500 goal." And he goes, "Man, well, I really think I could sell you, And I said, "Okay, well, shoot." He didn't call me back within a week and says, "Hey, I think I got a deal for Martinsville if you want to come." So here we are, and I couldn't be more excited about it. It's been out of the car for a little while now, but I've been staying busy with other series and other forms of racing, and really excited about getting back in a Cup car again, and especially Martinsville. I really have grown to love that place over the last few years that I drove.
So, Casey, that's the goal, right? To reach 500. This just isn't a one-off thing, right? You want to get to 500 starts?
Yeah, and it is. I mean, right now it is just a one-off, but this has been a great platform to really put out there in the air that it's something that I would like to achieve, and fortunately, there's been other people that are possibly interested in sponsoring future races now, just from the chatter that we've had over the last couple of weeks, and hopefully over time I can put that together. It doesn't have to be this year. I could try to put in a few this year if I can, and then set something up to finish off next season. But as of right now, it's a one-off race, but I'd love to. The whole goal is to get all 11 races to reach 500.
It's hard to get something like NASCAR competition out of your blood, isn't it? The excitement, the fans being at the racetrack. I mean, just for people like us that are standing around, it's amazing. But for a driver, it must be really hard, Casey, to get that out of your blood.
It is. I over the last couple of years and just spending time with my family and raising the kids and getting that quality time that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise if I was running full time. I really appreciated, the time that I've gotten over the last few years, but I'd be lying if I didn't say every time I went to the racetrack and caught up with everybody and saw guys that I raced against still racing and seeing those new cars, just wondering what it feels like and wanting to get in and try it out. You never really lose it, for sure. That desire and that passion. I mean, very few drivers or professional athletes in general really get to call their own shot and retire when they want to. I was one of those guys that, I woke up one day in the musical chairs and there just wasn't a seat to sit in. And I didn't want to be one of those guys that was, running around in the back just to get a paycheck or do that kind of thing. And this whole 500 goal gave me a whole new mindset as to, an objective that I want to reach, a goal that I want to reach. And it really changed my mind as to, wanting to put a full effort into coming back.
So, Casey, you didn't just drive the cars. You won at many different levels. I remember very clearly the Coke 600 victory with the family around for you. When you compete, it's got to be one thing at the Cup level. But when you win like that's just got to, again, ingrain you so much in these series and just in the whole idea of competition at NASCAR's top level.
For sure. Having experienced that, it makes you want to experience a lot more, after it happens. And I think that I've been very fortunate, that at every level that I've ran, I've had an opportunity to win races, except for the IndyCar level. I only dabbled in a handful of races in that, but, every series that I've been in, other than that, I was able to win at that level. And it was very fulfilling to get that win at Charlotte. It was a big weekend for a number of reasons. Obviously being Memorial Day weekend and the sponsor at the time being National Guard. Memorial weekend, Day weekend has always been a huge weekend for my family with, my uncle's success at the Indy 500. And, it was a special day for sure. And to be home at Charlotte where, family was there, all your friends were there. It was a special win for sure.
Yeah, I remember that victory lane very clearly. So, Casey, when you grow up with a name like Mears and with your uncle and also your father, everybody that was involved in racing when you were growing up, was there any idea for you to do anything else but race cars? Did you ever want to do anything else?
There was a time I used to love art. I used to love drawing and stuff as a young kid, and I think when I was in middle school and even going into high school, I was considering architecture. Being involved in something like that. But it was pretty clear early on that I was going to go racing. As a really young kid, I was just following my dad around going to races, and he let me race three-wheelers and four-wheelers. I did some go-kart racing and started getting into off-road. And by the time I was 12 or 13 years old, I was already racing in the Mickey Thompson Off-Road Series, which at that point it was televised by ESPN. We were doing autograph sessions. We were winning a little bit of prize money, and that was the time when it really hit me. That wow, this is something that I could do. That's a blast. I love to do it, and I could make a living out of this. And at that point, I started talking to my dad and my mom about, hey, this is something I'd really like to pursue. And they were all in on giving me the tools that I needed and the advice that I needed to reach out to the right people and get in the right places to show what I could do.
You know what? I'll say it irks me because, for lack of a better term, that people these days, and we have some spirited conversations about this on the radio these days, Casey. That it doesn't. It might help to have a certain last name. It might help to have a bunch of money behind you or look a certain way. But those things don't drive a race car, and they're no guarantee. You still have to work at it. You still have to have the talent, because if everybody could do it, there wouldn't be just 38 guys doing it every weekend.
Yeah, 100%. I'd be lying if I didn't say that, a couple doors opened for me that might have opened a little easier for other guys, just already having relationships in the sport. I could early on, I could go to a guy like Rick Hendrick or a guy like Richard Childress and ask for 5 minutes of his time, and they'd usually give it to me, just because of my history and my family's history in the sport. Even back in the IndyCar days, guys like Bobby Rahal and Derek Walker and guys that I spoke with about doing things, it was the door would at least open for a conversation, but it really doesn't do much past that. Once you have those opening conversations and you maybe get an opportunity to test a car, at the end of the day, they're going to be looking at what kind of numbers you put on the board, and nobody wants somebody in their car that's not going to perform. So, I had to work really, really hard at performing the best I possibly could. Obviously, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to, keep sponsors happy and that. And also, what people don't realize behind the scenes, the team structure, the chemistry, behind the scenes with the crew chief, the team, the owner, the sponsor, that whole combination. There's a lot that goes into keeping everybody happy, and making sure everybody's performing at their best, and making sure that I'm giving everybody the information they need to do their job the best. So there's a lot that went into it, and I think that that's why I was able to stick around for 15 years in the sport and do it for so long.
And that is pretty incredible, Casey, to get to 489 in and of itself. I know that's the goal that you're after, is getting that 500, but 489 is pretty impressive. I remember very clearly, Casey, I ran into you at Dover one time in the garage, and we were talking about some other stuff, and you told me that there were some times in your career that you probably could have walked away, but you decided to stay around the sport, talk to people, and stay relevant. And I always remember that advice that you gave me that day about sticking with it. And if you hadn't have been around, you might not have had the opportunities you had to get to 489.
100%. I was with Hendrick Motorsports, and just started my second year with Hendrick Motorsports. We really came on. It took a while. No matter what team that you're with, no matter the depth, no matter the budget, the chemistry and everything has to kind of come together. And that last year that I was with the 5 car, we struggled the first part of the season. NASCAR had made some rule changes. We really struggled as a whole, and about mid-season, we really started hitting our stride. And that was the year that Jimmy and Jeff were fighting tooth and nail for the championship, going back and forth. And if I would have made the chase, the points that we would have accumulated, we would have finished third in the championship that year. So it
Wow.
was, it was exciting. But having said that, things were already changing. They decided to go with Mark Martin, which Mark did a great job. Obviously, I went to RCR with the Jack Daniels deal, and we got to, I want to say it was November or December, and we got word from Jack Daniels that they weren't coming the next season, and it was so late. There was no time to get anything proper put in place for sponsorship. And I floated around that year. Started off in Daytona with a really almost embarrassing program, and then filled in a little bit for Brian Vickers, and then was standby for Denny Hamlin. And then towards the tail end of that season, I ended up getting an opportunity to get in the Geico car with Germain Racing, and I was able to stick around for another 5 years and really help build that program. So if I wouldn't have been at the track, if I wouldn't have been doing those fill-ins, if I wouldn't have been making the phone calls, it's so easy to just get passed by.
So also, Casey, though, after that was all said and done, you got stuck with me doing TV for a little while. That certainly was, I enjoyed the heck out of it. I hope you did. And I know at times we probably annoyed the producers a little bit much. We took it seriously, but we had a little fun too, I think.
Yeah, I got to say I really enjoyed that. Being on Fox with you guys was a blast, and we really had a good time. I mean, we took it very seriously. Obviously, we all showed up early. We took our notes. We wanted to provide great info for the viewer, but at the same time, it was just a great group of people, and it's hard not to have a good time when you're on TV with your friends. So really enjoyed that time, and I miss it, to be honest. I did it for a couple of years with you guys, and moving back to Arizona kind of took me out of the fold to be in the on TV and do that kind of thing. But I really enjoyed it, and had a blast with you guys and learned a lot from you guys. I mean, you guys that do that stuff all the time. I mean, it's very, very underestimated how you guys make it look so easy, when at an adverse time, or the producer comes in and goes, "Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, we don't have that, fill some time and make
Yeah.
it work." And to see you guys that, do it week in and week out, how you make it, a good show without having any issues is really impressive. I learned a lot.
Yeah, and then the real thing was to make the producers and the bosses think it's really hard. It's harder than it is. Make the viewer think it's easier than it is. So, Casey, when you get back behind the wheel of this race car, a lot of people have been talking recently about NASCAR's approval process. You went away from NASCAR racing, but when NASCAR looks at who is going to be able to have one of the coveted spots on any given Sunday or Saturday night, they look pretty closely at what somebody has done. And although you've been away from the NASCAR racing for a bit, you've still been behind the wheel of some race cars, haven't you?
Yeah, and I think having 15 full seasons of Cup and all the races that I ran, all the testing that I did, all the stuff that I did in the past, obviously they take that in consideration. But at the same time, I was doing the SST races with Robbie Gordon, which you really had a good time at. Going to the Baja 1000, I ran the Nora 1000. I did some Porsche races. Also did a Super Copa races, which is kind of like a NASCAR style car down in Mexico with some good friends, Michelle Jourdain and a bunch of the old IndyCar guys went and did that. Did a TA2 race at in Connecticut at Lime Rock with a bunch of guys, Ryan Newman, Biffle. So, and then I also belonged to a club track out here in Arizona called Apex Motor Club, and some really good friends down the road that have a couple cars, and we go out and bang those things around. So I've been staying current in the seat. I haven't just been sitting on the couch, and I think that factored into them allowing me to run this race. And then from what I understand, if I can get through Martinsville and get that under my belt, then I could potentially be approved to run the super speedways. And I get it's frustrating to know that you've had so much time in the sport to think that maybe you couldn't run a Daytona or a Talladega. But at the same time, I mean, those are places that, you're making choices at those places that really put other people's lives at risk, at times too, or can, right? So I see their standpoint on that. And I also kind of see that it's not necessarily a locked in scenario, because I think NASCAR could go, hey, this is our approval process, but then you might get a different guy that has a different experience level or come from a different series, or you might eventually get another big car change where now that guy never drove that kind of car, and they gotta kind of, it's gotta be a little bit of a ebb and flow, I mean, it's if you put rules in place to what makes you approved, and then things slightly change over the years, that approval process that they put in a couple years ago might not necessarily apply properly. So it's not an easy thing for them by any means, but fortunately, recently it's everybody's kind of been in the same boat.
Well, Casey, there's a lot of people, present company included here, that are really excited to see you back behind the wheel. Hope you go out there and do really well, man. And it was great to catch up with you. It's been far too long. Let's make sure it's not as long in between times that we talk next time. But thank you for your time, Casey. I appreciate it, and go get them.
Yeah, I agree, John. Thank you very much. Great talking to you again. Good seeing you, and can't wait to get to Martinsville and have some fun.